Good evening, and welcome to the Lewisville ISD Candidate Forum. We have a great crowd tonight, and we appreciate each and every one of you in the audience for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this important discussion and learn more about each candidate's position on public education policy. I want to take a moment to share my appreciation for each of the candidates before we begin. Thank you for your interest and your willingness to run for office, for your dedication to be civically engaged, and for your desire to serve North Texas and our state in the legislature if you do win the seat that you're running for. It takes a lot for someone to go out, run for office, and to represent their communities, a lot of passion, a lot of resources, a lot of time, and that does not go overlooked. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Patrick Brophy, and I'm the Senior Director of Legislative Planning at the North Texas Commission. I'm joined on stage by 5 candidates running for 3 open seats in the Texas State House that are representing Lewisville ISD. Before we complete our introductions and get into our policy discussions, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our partners who helped organize tonight's forum and talk a little bit about LISD and our host campus. I'm thrilled to be with you here tonight at the Leo Stuver Auditorium, which is located in the heart of Lewisville High School's campus. It's exciting to be here at Lewisville High School during such an important milestone. In case you didn't know, the home of the Fighting Farmers is celebrating its 125th anniversary this year, something that certainly should be celebrated. Lewisville ISD is one of 5 high schools in the district, a district that reaches across 127 square miles, serves 13 municipalities, employs 6,500 North Texans, and cares for, educates, and inspires 50,000 students who are the future of our workforce. The North Texas Commission knows that the future of our economy and the success of our local communities depends on how well we prepare our students today. The North Texas Commission is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that leads the region's advocacy voice in Austin and Washington, D.C. We set out to accomplish this by convening and educating public and private sector leaders to ensure that our state and federal policies promote strong local governments, support excellence in public schools, increase the skilled workforce pipeline, and safeguard a thriving business environment. The NTC is proud to partner today with several Chamber of Commerce partners. We're grateful to the Flower Mound Chamber, the Lewisville Area Chamber, the Metrocrest Chamber, and the Colony Chamber of Commerce for their support of tonight's event. I also want to give special thanks to Dr. Lawyer Rapp, Superintendent of LISD, the Board of Trustees, and the exceptional staff of Lewisville ISD who have so graciously hosted us here tonight. And I would just want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to meet and really recognize how important you understand civic activities like these are, the candidate forum, and learning more about our candidates and the role they play in each of our communities. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few rules for the forum for both the audience and the candidates. As a reminder, this event is being recorded, so we ask that you refrain from using your personal device to record the forum. And please silence your cell phone as a matter of courtesy to eliminate disruptions. The recording for the forum will be publicly distributed and available for you after the event. Audience members are asked to refrain from applause or other signs of approval or disapproval during the forum. Candidates will give open remarks for up to 2 minutes, and we will rotate the order of responses from left to right, and then we'll give closing remarks for up to 1 minute at the end of the program. The speaking order for the candidates was predetermined based on their House district, and it will rotate from left to right as we move through each question. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question throughout the night. Our timekeeper will raise a sign to indicate how much time is left. The yellow sign indicates 15 seconds remaining, and the red sign says that time is up. Candidates are asked to please stop promptly when your time is up. Candidates, please respond directly and speak only to the contents of the question, and talk about your own positions, not those of other candidates. And please do not interrupt other candidates or attempt to engage with them when you are speaking. Lastly, before we get into the question and answer portion, into the candidate introductions, I want to mention that we do have a few names and districts that may look new or different from the past. Every 10 years following the census, the state of Texas redraws the boundaries of districts to adapt to population changes. Due to the growth in Denton County, there was an addition of a new state house and a shifting of the lines of all the current legislative districts as well. All the candidates for House Districts 57, 63, and 65 were invited to participate in the forum. The order in which the candidates are seated is based on their district number, looking from left to right. The candidates present tonight are Mr. Richard Hayes, Republican for House District 57, Mr. Darren Hamilton, Libertarian candidate for House District 57, Mrs. Denise Wooten, Democratic candidate for House District 63. The Republican candidate for House District 63 was invited but unable to attend. Next, we have Mrs. Brittany Verdell, Democrat candidate for House District 65, and Ms. Kronda Tamesh, Republican candidate for House District 65. Each candidate will now have up to 2 minutes for opening remarks. We ask that you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family's experience with Texas Public Schools. Mr. Hayes, we'll begin with you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Richard Hayes. Good evening. I live in Hickory Creek. I grew up in Denton, graduated from Denton High, as my wife did, have 5 kids, all 5 graduated from Denton High, but we're recently moved over here to Hickory Creek. I'm running for the State House of Representatives in House District 57. Denton County had 4 House districts. With the growth that we had in the state, you know, the nation grew about 6.5% in the last decade. The state of Texas grew at 11.5%, which is almost double, but Denton County grew 38.5%. We had tremendous growth. As a consequence, Denton County qualified for a 5th House district. And when they got through gerrymandering the lines, I just happened to live in an area where there was no incumbent. And so I'd been politically active for many years, and I was encouraged to run, and I did run. I had a contested Republican primary. I won that without a runoff. And in November, I do not have a Democrat, but I have my new friend here, Darren, who is a Libertarian, to face me. I've told people there are really 3 reasons to support Richard. The first is I'm a lawyer by training, 40-plus year lawyer, board certified in 2 areas, AV rated, Texas super lawyer. But I mainly am a trial lawyer, and as a consequence, I look at statutes regularly. And I read statutes. I've helped draft legislation. I think I have a better understanding, a better starting point than many people who have not been involved in the process of reading statutes. Secondly, I'm a professional registered parliamentarian. There's only about 300 of us in the United States. Some do labor unions, some do higher education. I've done political parliamentary procedure because a lot of the rules are in the election codes. And the third reason is I've been very politically active, and I would appreciate your support for Richard Hayes for House District 57.
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to call on me. My name is Darren Hamilton, and I'm running for the Texas House of Representatives in the newly drawn District 57, serving central and western Denton County. I moved to Texas with my family at the age of 14, graduated from high school here in Houston, and enlisted in the Marine Corps from here. Semper Fi to all my Marines out there. I am an autistic, having been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome about 20 years ago, so autism advocacy is a particular interest to me, along with bringing awareness to other more common mental health issues like depression, anxiety, especially as they relate to veterans like myself. There are a few issues that I believe are of particular interest to the people who live in my district. Immigration and border security. I believe border security is a red herring topic, or one that is intended to distract the person from a different issue. What I think we should really be talking about is a comprehensive immigration reform and how to make methods of legal immigration fair, reasonable, and more accessible to potential immigrants. And why we're here tonight, education and school choice. Education is one of the most expensive government services and should be expected to provide some of the best returns on our investment. Unfortunately, most of the discussions on improving education in Texas typically revolve around throwing more money at a system that was designed well before the current information age. This needs to change and to adapt to more recently proven successful options. And finally, the repeal of prohibition laws. Prohibition is the act of forbidding something, especially by law. It's basically the government telling people what they cannot do and claiming that these laws are in place for the good of the people, but they're not for the good of the people. We should not be trying to control someone else's personal choices and decision, and especially not through law. We tried prohibition laws before about 100 years ago, and it was a dismal failure.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you.
Testing, testing. Can everyone hear me back there? My name is Dr. Denise Wooten. I'm a psychologist, and I've practiced in this area for approximately 30 years. My specialty is autism, ADHD, developmental disabilities of all sorts. And as part of that work, I have long been privy to the educational needs of children who do need special education services or who suffer from anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder. Also, my experience with Lewisville ISD is that both of my girls attended and graduated from schools here in Flower Mound and participated in those with enthusiasm. And so I would like to be the representative for District 63 so that we can reform public education legislation to better support our public education. I'm a strong public school advocate. And I would also like to look at healthcare, and there are many other issues of importance, but I'm glad you're here tonight because I think you came because you're most concerned about what's happening in the schools and how we can make them more effective for our children. So yes, I have many other issues about which I care, but tonight I'm going to focus on the school issues. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Verdell, and I'm the Democratic nominee for State House District 65. I am here tonight as a result of public education. This very moment, and the reason why I'm sitting here, I dedicate to 3 teachers from my past. Mr. Sterling, God rest his soul, he was my English 3 teacher and also my debate coach. And he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself until now. Miss Drawhorn, she was also an English 4 teacher. She was the one to tell me all the time, Brittany, the way you advocate for people, you're going to be on stages one day, and you're going to be able to articulate their voices through your voice. And lastly, Mr. John Fisher. He was my theater teacher. He taught me how to pause after speaking. He taught me that when you're in front of people, you have to capture their attention, and you have to grasp them and leave them with a powerful message. Tonight, I'm sitting here as the Democratic nominee, but no matter which party you're affiliated with, I hope you leave here tonight knowing who is the best person to vote for and to stand behind. Because if you stand behind Brittany, once I'm elected, I'll stand behind you once I'm in Austin. Thank you so much.
Let me set my timer here to make sure. Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kronda Timish, and I moved into this district when my husband and I got married. We started our first business here in Lewisville, and all these decades later, we're still blessed to have a business that serves our community. I'm also a proud member of the chambers represented here tonight, the Flower Mound Chamber, the Colony Chamber, and the Lewisville Chamber. As a former Lewisville ISD school board trustee and a parent whose 4 children have gone through LISD schools, this forum is important. So thank you for taking time on a Thursday night to be here with us. I believe in giving back and working to improve our communities, and I have a proven track record of doing so. I have the experience to step into the job as your legislator for House District 65 the first day. As a successful business owner who understands the importance of the Texas economy, I've signed the front and the back of paychecks. I understand what it's like to make hard decisions, and I understand what it's like when we have to tighten our belt and do more with less. As an elected official who served on our public school board of a large, diverse district for 2 terms, advocating for the best education for our students, I am also a master trustee who's had the opportunity to travel across our state to look at incredibly small school districts to urban districts that have students of 250,000. Texas has 5.3 million students that we're educating, and we need somebody that understands the diversity of those needs. I'm also a responsible conservative who's been active in our community, both in not only in politics, but in nonprofits and service organizations. As we have important conversations tonight, I appreciate you being here to listen to what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now begin the question and answer portion of the forum. We have 6 questions that were prepared by the host committee. These questions were shared with the candidates prior to tonight's event, and they each have 2 minutes to respond. If at any moment you need the question to be repeated, I'm happy to do so. Our first question is about property tax revenue staying in the school district. Currently, inflation is at an all-time high, which is also impacting the cost that school districts are facing to provide for the needs of all students. LISD is advocating for ensuring that school districts' dollars stay in the school district. Candidates, what should the legislature do regarding the basic allotment to ensure that school districts can address rising costs occurring with teacher salaries, transportation, safety, and overall programs to meet student needs? Mr. Hamilton, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. Well, based on my admittedly limited research on this topic, my most immediate answer would be to work with the legislature to realign the basic allotment, bringing it more into alignment with the current cost of living and inflation indices. If we want to improve the quality of education for our student children, which necessarily includes all of its component parts, then we should be willing to build on what does work and dispose of or significantly alter what doesn't work. My personal evaluation on this topic leads me to conclude that the current basic allotment is insufficient to achieve the goals that we're being asked of our faculties and staff. A realignment may not resolve all of the issues presented, but it's somewhere to start. Thank you.
Well, I get to agree with my fellow candidate that we need to realign the state budget. Here is why I would say that. According to research, Texas is in the bottom 10 states in how much is paid per child, per student, for their education per year. So that's approximately $4,000 less per year than the average state. So while we're in the bottom on how much we pay for each child's education, we're in the top 2 states of our wealth. The wealth is not going to our precious children where it needs to go. If we looked at Texas as a world economy, we're 9th. So why are we not providing a better quality education for our children? So the answer is not to increase property taxes. The answer is not to have a state income tax. We need to reproportion the current state budget. There is a rainy day fund, also called surplus. And why can't that be used to increase the basic allotment? So we've got that $4,000 to make up, and then the cost of living on top of that. So this needs to be very strongly looked at in the state legislature when I'm there. The other thing I would say is we got to stop wasting district money by the state legislature passing bills like HB 4545. Are you all familiar with that one? I think I heard laughter. That's the one that says if you don't pass a star, you have got to have 30 hours of mandatory tutoring. But the legislature did not fund that. So districts have to dig somewhere. Oh, I have 15 seconds. Districts have to dig somewhere and find that money, and that's not fair. So, got that all in. So I think we've really got to take better care of our teachers and of our students and do what we need to have a quality education.
So I have a similar answer to the previous two. We actually need to revisit our recapturement. We have, or LISD has poured over $50 million into recapturement, and that funding needs to be here in the district. If we increase at the state level our portion as legislatures and actually allow transparency to be had between the state legislature and the school districts, they will be able to put the money where it needs to be. And the answer is not raising property taxes. That is not the answer. No one wants to pay any more in property taxes because of the cost of gas, the cost of living at this point in time. And so therefore, at the state level, we need to ensure that we work with our school districts, bring them to the table, and ensure that we listen to the experts, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are educating our children, and they are the ones who have the subject matter expertise in regarding how we need to do things with our students in our schools.
Texas has a constitutional obligation to provide an education to every student, and schools have an obligation to honor that commitment to our families and community to do the best job that they can. As a former school board trustee, I've witnessed firsthand the rising costs to educate our students in our classrooms. Our property taxes are higher than ever, but less money is staying in our communities. Just for one example, you know how the gas prices have risen these past year. Imagine the cost it is for our districts to run their buses each and every day. Try to imagine the desperate shortage of bus drivers. Now consider that the state has not updated some of the funding formulas for gas since 1986. We've had 7 presidents in that time frame. Another good example is our special education kiddos. As we are constantly learn to do more and the best for our students and the most appropriate and safest for their learning environment, those specialized costs continue to go up each and every year. And don't forget, we're federally and state mandated to meet standards. It's another place where we cannot do more for less for our most vulnerable populations. Look at building costs, the cost to build new buildings and the maintenance on older buildings. Thanks to COVID, supply chains, labor shortages, and the booming Texas economy, prices are going up. We've had a significant price increase on that. As homeowners, we can do more with less because we choose to, but our classrooms, we cannot put 60 kindergarten students in one classroom because we want to do more with less. Our state comptroller, Glenn Hager, has said that Texas has a surplus to work with heading into next legislative session. With some of that money, Governor Abbott has announced a plan to put $13.5 billion back into the hands of our property taxpayers with property tax relief. We need to have a conversation about the other amount. Thank you.
Teacher for 17 years at Billy Ryan High School. I've been involved in the educational world. I served on the Board of Regents of Texas Women's University, and I served on the board of the Denton Public School Foundation. So I'm a product of public schools, and you heard me say before, I have 5 kids who went there. Let me begin by saying this. Teachers deserve to be paid more money. I was a Cub Scout den leader for 8 years. I had 8 kids. They were kicking me in the tail. And I'm thinking about teachers, y'all have 20, 30 kids. I don't know how you do it. You need to be paid more. But here's the problem. Back in about 1993, where the litigation started with the Edgewood case on how do we pay for schools, and the Supreme Court ruled that poor school districts have the right to have about the same amount of resources as the wealthy schools. In the meantime, the state has declined or reduced the amount of contribution they're making to public education. So we need to allocate more dollars from the general revenue to public education. The second thing I would say is we need to reduce our ad valorem taxes. If we can devote more dollars from to the state budget, then we can reduce our local ad valorem taxes, and that'll take some pressure off the schools, and there won't be as many dollars that have to be switched to other districts.
Thank you. Our next question is about a topic that's been spoken about tonight, and one that's a consistent issue throughout the campaign season: school choice. Throughout the campaign season, there's been an increased focus on the Texas Parental Bill of Rights, which has been in existence since 1995. Many have called for an expansion of these rights to include school choice and the creation of a voucher program. Mrs. Wooten, we'll begin with you. Candidates, your question is that historically, the legislature has overwhelmingly opposed vouchers, which are taxpayer-funded subsidies to private or non-public education entities. Would you support a voucher bill?
I am a supporter of public education. I do not, in general, support vouchers, and let me explain why. The goal of public education is to provide an equivalent opportunity for all Americans and all Texans to have a quality education. So I am not in favor of letting people who are enrolling their children in elitist, accelerated, expensive private schools by their choice that have the money to do that. I'm not in favor of giving them any of the state money. That perpetuates classism, where the haves get more and the have-nots get less. Secondly, I'm not in favor of parochial or religious schools receiving state money. After all, wasn't our country founded on separation of church and state? And I believe that if we don't get some good Democrats down there into the legislature, it would only be certain religions that were allowed to have their schools represented. And that is fundamentally not part of our Constitution. Our Constitution was formed on the basis of freedom of choice of religion. So no way would I want state money to go to particular religious organizations. I've run out of words for once in my life, y'all. But in general, I would say there is a very narrow set of circumstances where I might be in favor of vouchers, but that is going to be extremely narrow, and it's for very needy special education children who need integrated services such as applied behavior analysis, speech therapy, occupational therapy, along with their curriculum. That is the only time I would support a voucher.
So I would like to go back to being in 4th grade 2 weeks before school is out. I hear a conversation with 2 of my teachers, and I hear them saying how they're applying for jobs to work at over the summer. One is saying they're applying for Ross, another one is saying they're applying for Macy's, and at that time I didn't understand why. But now that I'm in this political arena, I understand that because there's funding going in other places other than the right place. If the state of Texas put the money that they would be considering for vouchers into our public education, we wouldn't have the same question that we had as the first question that we all answered. We have to put the money where it is prioritized, and that's our teachers, that's our students. They are our most valuable possessions, and teaching is the start of every occupation. Teaching is what got all 5 of us here on this stage, no matter how different we view each other or view things that's going on in our society. Teachers are the reason why we're here, and that's why all funding should go into public education and not into private vouchers.
Article 7 in our state constitution states that we're to support and maintain an efficient system of public, free schools. I am absolutely committed to that. If you want to make sure that the Texas economy stays healthy, you must ensure a strong workforce. Let's get these students ready to learn, then ready to earn. So I do not support a philosophy that seeks to weaken our public education. We need to make sure it's easier to educate children and not harder. There are 5.3 million students in public schools here in Texas, with each arriving every day. And think about what happened with Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Harvey, with thousands of displaced families arriving in the Metroplex. I know we're going to see families arriving here after Hurricane Ian with its devastating western Florida right now. And we don't just shut the doors for our public schools and say, sorry, we're full. Texas public schools educate every single student that walks through their doors, no matter who they are or where they come from. It does not matter if they have support or structure at home, no matter what their story is, and that's the law. Our first priority must be to fully fund our Texas public schools.
The Texas parental rights are found in the Texas Education Code, Chapter 26, and essentially what it provides is that parents are to be partners with the school administrators, their teachers, the staff, and the school boards. Parents are encouraged to be involved in their children's education in creating the curriculum and implementing the curriculum. So that's very important. And the reason for the statute, this isn't a new law, is what is the goal of education? Excellence in education. And you know what? We know that different kids have different interests, different academic abilities, different learning styles. And I believe this, there's no single delivery system that is right for every kid. As a consequence, I think that's why parental choice is important. As much as we might not want to admit it, there are some school districts that don't make the cut. Denton ISD, Lewisville ISD especially, Argyle ISD, I have all a part of 17 cities and 7 school districts. Virtually all of my school districts are doing a very excellent job. But just across the county line, we have school districts that are not doing that. So while I'm wary of vouchers, I do believe that parental choice over their children's education is more important than the structure in which is provided. So as a practical matter, in my opinion, that means the dollars need to follow the child. Now, how might we do that other than vouchers? It could be a tax credit. You know, when we have a tax credit, we're getting back the dollars that we paid in to the government in the first place. So we're just taking our dollars, instead of allocating it through one school system, we're going to be allocating it to another. Thank you.
Would I support a voucher system? For charter schools, maybe, depending on how and why it was presented. For instance, as Mrs. Wooten has presented already, for autistic students. For private schools, absolutely not. I was asked a similar question last month for a survey, so I'll say here what I said there. I oppose the use of school vouchers to help fund student tuitions for private schools because I believe that it's morally wrong to steal. Advocates of voucher programs call it school choice, but the promise of the voucher system to improve the quality of public education has failed to materialize, even where vouchers have been used. Numerous studies have instead shown that for both parents and students, the students' peer groups matter far more than their educational quality. Libertarians claim that taxation is theft, meaning that we believe that forcibly taking someone's money and giving it to someone else can never be morally justified, even when it's the government doing the taking and giving. In the end, vouchers steal monies that are allocated to public education and simply give them to private education, to the private education entities, with no guarantees on the improvement of students' educational quality or experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next topic is another issue that's been discussed heavily throughout the campaign season: accountability and assessment for public schools. There's been a lot of discussion about the overemphasis on tests in recent years. Our current A through F accountability system is entirely based on STAR to rate our schools at the elementary and middle school levels. Do you think that STAR and end-of-course exams are telling us everything we need to know about a student's ability to succeed in college and the workforce? Mrs. Verdell, we'll begin with you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The answer to that question is no. STAR does not tell us everything we need to know. Our children, our families, our communities, our teachers, we're all pouring into the future. which are our current students. The STAR test only takes a little piece of what's going on right now. We aren't able to, we should capitalize on looking at extracurricular activities. We need to look at what's going on with the parent involvement and the teacher involvement, and truly showing how our students are able to thrive. A STAR test does not mean that you will not graduate college. A STAR test does not mean you won't be an amazing entrepreneur. And so, in regards to the way that assessment is happening, there's an evaluation that's happening right now and across the state of Texas in all the schools. And when you vote me in as HD 65, the candidate for this race, I will be able to take the recommendations from that assessment and actually apply it and work and partner with the school districts and be a partnership in regarding how assessment is done with our students.
As a former school board trustee who's been down to Austin advocating on this very issue, I'm going to have a lot more to say than will fit in 2 minutes, so I'm happy to discuss with you after this. I know firsthand that our teachers and administrators want the ability to measure student growth. They want to know how the students are progressing. School districts are not afraid of assessment. The problem with using the STAR is it's a snapshot in time, and one size does not fit all. We're measuring a student with that one snapshot that will never tell the whole story. Plus, I find it very problematic that the STAR does not give diagnostic feedback. We want to help our students. We want to help them do better, and the STAR test is not providing the tools to do that. The STAR test is also incredibly unfair to our teachers. We absolutely know how a successful student in the classroom is resilient on dozens of factors. It's relied upon their home life, their socioeconomic status, how much support they're getting from home, do they have technology to do their homework at home. We know that all of these impact how a student learns. And a school district can't take responsibility for all of these things. That's why I'm happy to volunteer with groups like Communities in Schools and Lewisville Education. These are nonprofits that partner with ISDs to help improve outcomes for our students. I mentor a student who's the sweetest thing, but she helps her parents after work every day in the back of a truck, and so she doesn't have access to Wi-Fi. She's having trouble keeping up with her homework. And so how are we measuring that when we need to be able to figure out solutions for our students? Lewisville ISD is different from CFB ISD. It's different from Argyle ISD. One size does not fit all, and we need to figure out a way of measuring our students' success and growth with a way to improve student learning.
Thank you. You know, the goal, again, is excellence in education. And we need more back to the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science. We need to reduce the social advancement and the social education that is going on in our school systems right now. What that does is it polarizes an environment. It puts teachers in a horrible circumstance. The reason we educate is so that people can be meaningful and productive members of society. So how might we measure that besides excellence in the classroom? Number that go to college, number that go to community college, number that go into the vocations, the number that enter the military. All those are with the goal of becoming a productive member of society. It doesn't appear that STAR is the test that measures appropriately. You do have to set a standard. We want to set a high standard. We're competing in a global economy and a global world. So we have to set a high standard if we're going to compete effectively, and then we have to measure that and hold people accountable. Thank you.
So to restate the question, I'm sorry, could you restate the question, please?
Yes. Do you think STAR and end-of-course exam tests are telling us everything we need to know about a student's ability to succeed in college and in the workforce?
Quite simply, no. There is no single test, and there are no measurable criteria that can definitively determine a student's ability to succeed in college or in the workforce, and any attempt to show that there is will ultimately fail because it just isn't so. The idea here should be about serving the needs, the idea here shouldn't be about serving the needs of all students. It should be about serving the needs of each student. As an autistic, I recognize that the one-size-fits-all method of education may work for a majority of students, but numerous educational studies conducted over the past few decades have repeatedly demonstrated that the results of any standardized test cannot accurately evaluate a student's performance, as some students simply do not test well despite otherwise stellar academic performance, and vice versa. That's me. As for other criteria to consider, that can be done as we go. Thank you.
I will try to keep this to 2 minutes, but this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. As a licensed psychologist, I was trained in test administration, test standardization. I continue to administer standardized tests myself, and you always have to do that with the knowledge that this is an imperfect measure. So to use one measure to say whether a school district or a student is functioning well and is high quality is a very poor mistake. So the other thing I would say is there's a certain percentage, I would probably guesstimate 25 to 30% of a student population is going to have trouble passing a grade level star. Part of this is because they might have a learning disability in reading. Part of this is because they might be in that 13% of the population that we call slow learners. They're neither average nor have intellectual disability. So they don't qualify for modifications of the curriculum of the STAR, but they're quite unlikely to pass a grade level STAR. Then we have individuals who have ADHD or autism or other kinds of disorders that make it difficult for them to take tests. Many of my clients have test anxiety. They freeze up under the pressure of a timed examination of that kind of import. So I do not believe we should be using the STAR as our only measure. We do need accountability, but I agree with what Ms. Verdell said about we need whole child initiatives, we need to look at their community service, we need to look at their readiness for life beyond college. We have a lot more to do with that. But we need to have culture fair assessments that account for all the variabilities in a demographic sample. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard a lot tonight about funding needs for local districts and the fact that resources are desperately needed to help improve our schools. I'd like to take the conversation more specifically to an issue that is impacting Lewisville ISD heavily. That's Recapture. Ms. Tamesh, we'll begin this question with you. Each year, Lewisville ISD sends a significant amount of money back to the state in Recapture. In fact, LISD has budgeted $54 million for Recapture this year alone. Also known as Robin Hood, this program allows the state to remove local property taxes and revenue from a school district and redistribute it to help balance the state's general budget. In a year that Texas is expected to have a surplus of at least $27 billion, would you support efforts to reform Recapture and increase transparency around the program?
I believe the goal of all government entities should be for transparency. Texans want to know where their tax dollars are going and what they're used for. Next legislative session, we will have a surplus in the budget, and part of that needs to address fully funding our public schools. In Texas, we have 2 ISDs alone that send $1 billion with a B back in recapture payments to the state. This is a local taxpayer money, and as a former trustee, I know how hard it is to swallow the idea that our money our families are paying here is being sent to Austin to be used in other ways. If there's an extra revenue collected above and beyond what is needed to fund the local school district, then we should have a conversation around the taxpayers getting some of that money back.
Well, more transparency is better than less. And I've already told you that teachers need to make more money and that the state needs to pay a higher percentage of education. So we have the dollars this time to start doing that. But that's just a Band-Aid. The solution has to be to build it into the structure of our state budget. And the second part has to be to reduce the ad valorem tax. We take You know, we're in a fast growth area where we have soaring population and soaring property values. So of course you're going to generate more tax revenue. If the state were to pay more of the educational function, then you could lower your local ad valorem tax, then you'd have less dollars to reallocate. But more importantly, what we're probably going to have to do, guys, is to switch off the ad valorem tax horse. It's killing us. You can't ever own your house. And so we have a constitutional provision that says we're not going to have a state income tax. So guess what that leaves? That leaves sales tax. That's where the state, through their 6.5% right now, is able to generate the funds they do to send back to the communities. That's going to have to inch up, and as that inches up, then the ad valorem tax base can go down.
So, yes, I would absolutely support efforts to reform Recapture and increase transparency. Quite frankly, my first response would be to repeal Recapture entirely. But since I can't currently determine how to serve the needs of students in rural or underserved communities that benefit from this program, I find that I must settle for reformation of the program instead. Thank you.
I once again agree with my colleague that I do not believe we should completely do away with the Robin Hood or Recapture program, because I believe we have a moral obligation to others who are less fortunate. However, we do need to reduce the amount that we are giving back to them by using the rainy day or surplus funds to make up for that allotment to the poorer districts or the underserved districts. So I might be pretty unpopular to say this, but I care about those students in those poorer districts. I believe we do need to do something to help them, and I have for years paid my tax dollars cheerfully, knowing that a lot of them were going to go to people that I didn't even know, that weren't in my district, and I was happy to do that because, after all, if we make all of Texas have a better education, not only can we live with ourselves morally because it's the right thing to do, but it benefits our economy. There's a trickle effect if you strengthen any part of an educational system across a state, it improves the state. So there is research to suggest that. And so for many reasons, I think it's in our best interest to reduce it so that we can help our district, but also look out for the needs of the poorer districts that need those funds as well. If that could be made up somewhere in the state budget completely, cool. I don't know if that's possible.
As a mother of two daughters that are currently enrolled in LISD, one that is actually sitting in the audience tonight, I absolutely support Recapture because those funds that are brought back into the district can go into so many resources here in Lewisville ISD. It could be poured into our counselors here in supporting our students. It could be poured into mental health. As we know, Denton County is ranked 1 in 5. Every 1 in 5 people are diagnosed with depression here in Denton County. And we can pour some of that money into our students. We can pour that money into our sports and our extracurricular activities such as band. And we can also see in transparency where our money is going and how it's affecting our students.
Thank you. Our next topic is on student safety. In 2019, the Texas legislature passed comprehensive school safety and mental health legislation to ensure schools are safer for students, educators, and staff. Additional work since 2019 has built upon this effort, but in light of the tragedy at Robb Elementary and Uvalde, there must be more done to ensure that our schools are safe. Candidates, what should the legislature do to further equip our public schools with the resources, training, and support needed to provide a safe environment for our students and educators? Mr. Hayes, we'll begin with you.
I think that when we first started looking at school safety, this was kind of one of those unfunded mandates that government is so good about doing. So if we're serious about school safety, we're going to have to allocate the dollars. There's no single thing that can be done to ensure a safe educational environment. It's going to take a multi-faceted approach. I think the governor did a good thing he formed 2 special interim committees, one dealing with the Robb Elementary investigative committee, and the other is a mass violence prevention and community safety committee. There's been some excellent hearings going on that. Some very valuable data has been coming out of that, and their comments sent things like reduce the number of entrances and exits to building. You're going to have to harden the schools to some degree. You're going to have more school resource officers. You're going to have to educate students, faculty, and the community that if they sense something that's going on or hear that something is about to happen, that they have to immediately report it. And then we're going to have to find volunteers, teachers and staff, that when a violent situation responds, that they are in a position to respond back. I know that's not right for every teacher. It wouldn't necessarily be right for me. I'm horrible with a firearm. Our family didn't grow up with them. I'm not comfortable with them, but I believe in people's right to protect themselves and people's rights to own those. And if you're one of those people that's comfortable with it and can come to the aid of a situation, then they need to immediately react. We know that the longer you wait and the longer it takes law enforcement to get there, the more damage that there will be done. Thank you.
It's my understanding that most facilities already have sufficient safety and security measures in place as a result of their initial construction, but even those can be compromised by human interaction. As for security training, hire veterans. Nothing, absolutely nothing, comes close to security as military combat training, particularly in the Army and the Marine Corps. As a veteran myself, I've seen firsthand the culture shock of attempting to return to civilian life only to be told that the extensive training that we've received is incompatible with the available jobs in the civilian workforce. Most veterans who encounter this circumstance either return to the military or choose some paramilitary career such as the police or a private security. Hiring veterans as security would ensure that even without armaments, situations like what happened in Uvalde would likely be handled far differently. Thank you.
The first thing I would do about this is to change the question. This question is like putting the cart before the horse. Saying, what should we do to harden our schools? What should we do to harden our staff? How should we equip them about school safety is missing the entire point that the state legislature could indeed pass some extremely common sense, safe gun legislation to protect our children so that we don't need to have hardened schools. So
Please
I would
refrain
change
from
the
applause.
Sorry. Didn't mean to elicit applause, y'all. But that is the first thing I would do is say, we can pass some sensible things that help. We can reduce the age at which foolish young people who are crazed can get an automatic type weapon and go use it on an impulse. We could have mandatory waiting periods so they couldn't just impulsively on the spur of the moment, hot-headedly go off and shoot a bunch of people all at one time. And I would also advocate for that we need to, well, there was one more thing I wanted. Comprehensive background checks, thank you. We also need to really work on the red flag laws, and those who seem like they might be at risk, we need to check them more carefully. So we Democrats don't want to take everybody's guns. We just want fools to have them and be able to use them, and we wouldn't need to protect our schools and harden them so much if we got more of those things in place. Now, I also want to change the question a little bit too, to it's not just about gun violence. We need safety from bullying at our schools. In my field of psychology, we have a statistic of 10% of children are frequently bullied. We also need to protect safety in terms of mental health and suicide prevention by having more mental health resources on site that are trained clinicians. Thank you.
In support of what Denise was saying, as a licensed master social worker, I truly value being proactive instead of reactive. And the way that the question is framed is in more of a reactive type of mindset. We need to pour resources into ensuring that our children are well before any type of gun tragedy happens. We need to ensure that we provide them with the support of the mental health resources that I was just speaking of in the previous question when I said we should support reforming Recapture. We need to ensure that in every part and every aspect of our students, safety is the priority. But it's not just our students, our teachers as well. Our teachers are traumatized and they're burnt out, and we need to ensure that we put the resources in place to ensure that they are safe, they are well, that they are happy coming to school every single day, knowing that the state and the school districts are doing everything in their power to ensure their safety. So, as a candidate, as a common sense gun safety candidate, I have the ability, the knowledge, and the determination to ensure that we put laws into place that not only protect our students, but protects Texas and puts us ahead of the rest.
When we reduce expensive mandates that waste human resources without providing educational value, we are creating more opportunities for students, for teachers and staff to connect with our students. We need to be addressing mental health and campus safety, and both of those get resolved with funding. We need to make it easier for school districts to collaborate with their law enforcement partners to increase day-to-day safety on our campuses. We need to offer funding grants and rebates to school districts who've creatively solved these problems. I see a lot of opportunities to partner with local entities, including nonprofits, to improve campus security and mental health for students as well as our teachers. We cannot control every single variable in a child's life when they walk in our school's doors, but we can look for ways to ensure that the campus culture is one where they feel valued, respected, and safe. We can find ways to reduce bullying to help students and families alert school district staff when they become aware of an issue. We can find ways to increase the opportunities for students to feel connected in their studies and activities.
Thank you. As we talk about quality of classrooms, we can't overlook the one of maybe the most important aspect of a classroom that determines its quality, which is our teachers. As we move into our final question of the night, I'd like to turn the discussion to address teacher workforce challenges, an issue that has been of high priority for the legislature and leaders throughout the state. Governor Greg Abbott has asked the Texas Education Agency to establish a teacher vacancy task force to study this problem. Currently, we have about 400,000 teachers in the state. In Lewisville ISD, there are 6,500 employees. In a typical year, the district would see about 900 resignations or retirements. Last year, there was almost double that. One of the top priorities for the next legislative session will be how our schools attract, retain, and train our teacher workforce. Candidates, would you support efforts to increase teacher salary and benefits and reduce time-burdensome legislation such as reading academies and HB 4545 requirements? Mr. Hamilton, we'll begin with you.
In my opinion, teaching is a calling and not a career. People don't become teachers because it's an easy way to get summers off. They do it because it's their passion. Yes, I would absolutely support efforts to increase teacher salaries and benefits, and I would work to repeal any legislation that requires educators to perform unnecessary administrative tasks that do not serve their students. Again, the simplest answer that I can come up with is simply to pay them more than the pittance they're currently paid. To paraphrase an old stand-up routine from the 1990s, 30 years ago, we have to stop paying teachers like the greeters at Walmart. After all, these are the people that we are asking to lead us and our children into the future, and they can't even buy real yodels. They have to get the Price Club 144-count steamer trunk size Little Debbie's or the equivalent. That is unacceptable. Thank you.
Like just about everybody up here, we would all agree that teacher salaries lag far behind the average teacher salary in the United States, and we have the wealth to pay teachers better. We also need to give cost of living increases to retirees. When people have dedicated their lives to our children, why are we letting them live in basic poverty after they retire? The other thing I would say, though, it's not just salary and benefits that need to improve. There is a lack of respect from the top officials in the government toward educators that I find appalling. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, several months ago, basically said, if not literally said, that the public education system is a babysitting service. I was affronted, not only on behalf of all the wonderful educators I've worked with for over 30 years, on behalf of the children that I see with autism and ADHD, but my own daughter is a special education teacher in Denton ISD. How dare state officials demean educators in that way? So we need to bring back respect for the educators that take care of our precious children and help them become independent, functional adults. So I think it's not just about salary, it's about respect. And as part of that respect, we need to let educators pick the curriculum. This is not for politicians or parents of minority splinter groups to pick the curriculum and say what is taught and what is not. We need to let librarians pick the books. There can be an opt-out system. Parents can know ahead of time what's going to be taught, what books will be in the library, and they can opt out. But no parent group or political group has the right to tell educators and librarians what they can do in a school.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. The question is, would you support efforts to increase teacher salary and benefits and reduce time-burdensome legislation such as reading academies and HB 4545 requirements?
Absolutely. First off, if you've been following my campaign, something that I've been saying over and over again is that we need to start teacher salary at $70,000, starting. From there, we need to provide support to our school districts. We need to come up with a survey that standardizes a universal system to know what's going on with our teachers. That way, at the state level, we will be able to impact and actually put in place laws and policies that actually will support our teachers and show them that we value them. Because what's going on right now, it does not show that we support or we value our teachers. They are underpaid, they are burnt out, and we need to take away the red tape that has teachers away from the classroom. This is their passion. They are holding the keys to our future, and we have to ensure that we support them by getting rid of any additional activities that keeps them away from the profession that they enjoy. As a state legislator, I will ensure that we pass through legislation that will actually allow teachers to spend more time in the classroom, that will actually allow them to have that one-on-one contact with our kids day by day. As a mother, I have been impacted by House Bill 4545. And I remember sitting just last semester with my daughter, her vice principal, and also her math teacher. And we were talking through House Bill 4545, and I said, hey, I'm running for office. Please tell me what can be done to help. Because it seems to me, as a mother looking at this, I'm having to send my daughter to summer school. And what happens after that? We're now in the fall semester, and we don't have a foolproof plan. It's an unfunded mandate that does not have the financial backing, and we need to put the funding where all the mandates are.
I'd say the state legislature can start by bringing more educators to the table. In task force and committee hearings, we need to be listening intently to educators on what they actually experience in the classrooms. Teachers are on the front lines in the classrooms, and they see firsthand the opportunities and needs in educating our children. We also need to be addressing our teacher retirement, funding, as well as teachers' salary. I also think a lot of people would reflectively talk about how to increase teacher pay, and I think that's certainly important, and I would support it, but it can't be all about money. Teachers deserve to feel and be respected in their profession. They deserve support from administrators and parents. They deserve to have the tools and training to do a good job. Teachers are not leaving the profession because they stopped loving their students or their calling. They're leaving because we as a society are just asking too much of them. It's time to return teaching to a noble profession that is rewarded and respected at all levels of our community. I can also tell you that when we are creating policies as state legislature, we need to have teachers talking to us and communicating, because in block walking, I've had HB 4545 come up, and the devil's always in the details. How do we help these students, or we follow the legislation and policy when a child transitions from 5th grade to middle school? How does that work? How do we fit that into a legislative policy that was created, but we don't always understand the impact in the classroom? And so I think it's really important, if elected as your state representative for House District 65, that I'm working collaboratively with our teachers and administrators to understand, as policies written, how will it impact our student learning? Because at the end of the day, we want every Texas student to be successful.
It's a tough job. And you know what? Life isn't particularly fair all the time. The last time I looked, we didn't have a student shortage, we had a teacher shortage. If you want more teachers, you're going to have to improve the working environment and the working conditions that teachers have. That means you're going to increase the pay, you're going to increase the benefits, you're going to let them get back to the basics. If there's a disciplinary problem in the classroom, you're going to get the disciplinary problem out of the classroom. The administrators need to back up the teachers. And for those kids who really don't want to learn, there are just some people who don't want to learn. I'm going to break somebody's heart out there, but there are just some kids who don't want to learn for whatever reason, good or bad. We need to recognize it, redirect them into from an academic environment to a social environment. But you have to improve the classroom environment. I agree with Cronda, you got to bring back the respect, but how can you bring back respect if the students in the classroom are not respectful of the teachers? So I think we have to have better discipline across the board. And then I would ask that our parents continue to be involved. The best educator of a kid is the parent. The bad news is some parents aren't very good educators. And so that presents a challenge for the teacher in the classroom to provide that foundation that they're not getting at home. That's why I believe different delivery systems serve the student better. And that delivery system can be in a public school. That doesn't mean it has to be parochial or private. But we have to be alert to that and provide it. I remember when I was working, I went to A&M and got my MBA before I went to law school. And we took a test the first day, and of the 24 people who were in graduate school, they said only 6 of y'all really deserve to be here. And I said, you know what? And I wasn't one of the 6. I said, you know what? I'm not going to let them kick me out of the class before I even get started. Give Richard Hayes a chance, and he'll show you he can do the job. And I was one of 8 that graduated.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now move in to our closing remarks. You will each have up to 1 minute for your closing remarks, and we will begin with Mrs. Wooten.
Again, my name is Dr. Denise Wooten, licensed psychologist, and I became a psychologist because I care so much about people and working with them on their needs. And then I became a specialist with children. And as part of that, I've worked so closely with the educational system that I view us as comrades in arms, basically, and as colleagues. And I will do everything in my power as the legislator for House District 63 to support public education and help all Texans have equivalent opportunities to achieve at the level of which they're capable. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Verdell, Democratic candidate for HD 65. I'm a licensed master social worker. I am passionate about education. I'm a proud graduate of Texas Women's University and University of North Texas. I currently work in education at Dallas College. And what I do there is that I partner with our early college high schools in ensuring that children are going through the requirements to ensuring that they are successful. And so, as a state rep, my life experience, my educational experience, my personal experience working in social work, being a CPS worker, being a lifelong advocate of everyone that I meet, I am the candidate for this race, no matter what else is said.
Again, my name is Kronda Timish, and I want to thank you for being here tonight on a Thursday night. I am a former Lewisville ISD School Board trustee, honored to have that position, a master trustee, a business owner, and I currently serve on the Child Protective Services Board. My family is a family of educators. I know how important it is to have somebody that understands education for our 5.3 million students in the state of Texas, from Big Bend ISD all the way to Houston ISD. One size does not fit all. As a business owner, I understand that we need to have a balanced budget. I have experience with making hard decisions and understanding how to make decisions that impact employees in our community. I can step into this role day one and work for our communities, our parents, our school districts, and our businesses. I would welcome the opportunity to visit with you more after this meeting. Again, Kronda Timish, Republican for House District 65.
Well, I'm Richard Hayes. I want to thank Lewisville ISD for organizing this and giving us the opportunity to appear before you this evening. And while there is some disagreement up here on the stage, I think you can see we're each passionate about trying to improve our education. As a consequence, I think you ought to look at maybe the qualifications and the prior background of the individual. As you heard before, I was on the TW Board of Regents. I've been on the board of the Denton Public School Foundation. One thing I didn't tell you is I coached our parliamentary procedure team at Billy Ryan High School for 15 years, during which time we won 8 state championships and 5 national championships. I was at the school 3 days a week doing that, so I have a real good sense of what's going on in our high schools. I'm a product of public school. My 5 kids are a product of public school. I believe in having an open door, and if you want to contact Richard Hayes, please do that. I'll give you my cell phone number. It's 940-391-1670. So if you have an issue or concern, please present it to me and I will listen with open ears. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to do that. In a representative government, it seems to me that the person that you select to represent you in the halls of government, that person should understand and know the issues that directly affect you, your family, or your community. If you're a veteran like I am, or an autistic like I am, or have someone in your family or immediate social circle that is either of these, then I'm going to ask for your support. I believe that people should decide laws, not government agents or political parties. I believe that as long as people are not harming others, they should be free to live their own lives and pursue their own interests, free from intrusion by the government. I'm running for Texas House District 57 because I believe that the time is long past due for there to be consistent voice for liberty and accountability in Austin. My name is Darren Hamilton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your thoughtful and insightful answers. The information that you shared helped educate community leaders, education leaders, and ultimately your voters on the important issues of where you stand on public education. That will no doubt be a benefit to everyone who is here and who will watch afterward when they make their selection at the ballot box next month. I look forward as a public education advocate to being in some of your offices next session, and I appreciate your candor and clearly your care for public education when it comes to these issues. Please join me in showing our gratitude for these candidates and giving them a round of applause. I again would like to thank our Chamber of Commerce partners in Flower Mound, Lewisville, Metrocrest, and the Colony. And of course, all of LISD, Dr. Rapp, and the board. A few things before we go. I do want to let you know if you care for more information on all the topics we discussed tonight, you can find Lewisville ISD's legislative agenda and the North Texas Commission's legislative agenda outside on a table. Grab a copy to take home to review. And remember that if you have not registered to vote yet, the deadline to register to vote is October 11th. That's coming up quickly. Early voting starts on October 24th, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Voter registration and voting location information can be found at votedenton.gov. That's votedenton.gov. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.